Well, well, well. Look how clean it is. It's not 100% there, but it's a hell of a lot better. Welcome back to the channel, guys. A lot of you moan about this bench. It keeps you up at night, you tell me. And yeah, it's just not been one of those priorities for me, unfortunately, with so much going on. But I did make a bit of an effort the weekend just gone to try and just not get it perfected, but get it better. And I think you'll agree that it is very much so better. I think I can even now zoom you out like this and you'll see there's a little bit of clutter around the edges, but for the working area, for the videos for you guys, it's going to be a little bit better. So the MP9 has a little bit of a problem. I bought some of these Precision Engineering downgrade valves. They look like they look very similar to the Dangerworks valves back in the day. But the problem with this KSC MP9 is the fact, and I'll just do a quick chrono for you here to show you. We're doing about 400 FPS. I mean, yes, this is on a 2, but 1.5 joules. It's not good, is it? So we're going to be downgrading this thing today. Luckily, I didn't feed another round in there. And I'm just going to be showing you, if you manage to get your hands on a valve or something, anything you need to do to rectify the power issue in your MP9, then you're going to need to know how to take it apart. So we're going to be doing that today. First, I'm going to be taking this ridiculously big, I think it's an angry gun suppressor. It's the dummy one, the one without the barrel extension, because why would you need more power out of this thing? And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to unscrew the front of the top cover. So if you look here, let me fold the stock so you can see this a little bit better. You've got a little flathead screw just above where the barrel is, and first we need to take this out. So you're just using a flathead. You want something that goes in there nicely and doesn't catch the plastic, because you can chew up the plastic quite easily if you use a flathead screwdriver that's a little bit too big. I'm going to spin that screw out. We're going to set it to one side. Once you've done that, you can press the button at the back and it will enable you to pull the top cover off. The spring guide is probably going to get caught up. Oh, it's actually not done it this time. Most of the time, these spring guides, they should sit in like this, so you should be able to press it and just pull it off. But they will come off with the top cover. Let me see if I can demonstrate that for you. Like that. So the button will stay in there. The spring pops out. Just be careful when taking it apart. It's not too much of an issue. The last thing you want is to cop one of those springs in the face. So then you have it boiled down to this. And what we need to do is we need to get this bolt dropped forward so we can lift it out of the lower assembly. And first, what we want to do that is we want to push this spring-loaded contraption here. You just have to be careful because these springs can jump out, especially on the Vorsk series. You push that in and you lift the little stopper out, and then what we'll do is we'll remove this. Just remember that this part is not ambidextrous in the way it goes in. So usually with these, you'll see that the edges on this surface are slightly rounded, where on this surface they're very much sharper. Not sharp, but you know, not as sort of rounded as this side. You can also tell the difference in the cutouts. So the one that has the little cutout compared to the long one needs to go on the left-hand side of the MP9. Once we've done that, what we can do, we can pull the two tabs down on the front and we can push the bolt forward. Pulling the two tabs down enables you to do this. If you don't do that, it won't go forward far enough. So push that down, push it there, and then we can lift up at the front and the back, and we just want to jimmy it a little bit, and you should be able to pull the whole assembly out. You'll see the bolt release will come out with it as well. Now, for the most part, we don't need to take all this apart. One thing you just need to take into consideration is the feed ramp section and the bolt release actually slot into the barrel. So we can pull that to one side for the moment, because all we need, you got the front outer barrel assembly, your outer barrel and inner barrel and hop assembly, and the bolt. Very, very easy indeed. And you'll see the part we want to change is that little valve in there. So we'll set the lower to one side. Now, there are many ways to do this. You will have to punch some pins out. There is a long pin that goes across the top at the back of the bolt, which holds this little lever and the spring in place. And then you've also got a roll pin here and a roll pin just here. There are different sizes. If I remember correctly, I haven't done this in a while, but you will need to punch them out. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to do the top one. And I'm going to get a pin punch. So you can get these pin punch sets off Amazon. They're very inexpensive, but if you want a good one, it's worth spending the extra dough. We'll go with the 1.5. Grab our hammer. And for this, we could use the armourer's block, if it's handy. I'm not going to go hunting for it. Otherwise, we can just use something to raise it off the bench. And I can't quite remember which direction this comes out, so give it a tap. Which way is the knurling? I think we're punching it out the correct side, but if not, we can always reverse it. Like so. No knurling on that side, so we probably need to go the other way, if I remember correctly. Again, it's been a long time since I've owned an MP9. So I'm going to punch this out, try and punch it out the other way if this block wants to allow me to do so. You'll see it came out a little bit easier that way because the knurled section is on the right hand side. Now, some pliers. And we can pull. What you want to do is hold pressure on the back of the bolt as you pull this part out, like that. And then if you loosen the pressure just lightly, you can pull this lever and the spring out in one. I tend to just set it down like that. That way you know how it goes back in. The roll pins are a little bit different. So the roll pins, because we can't get a punch on the inside, we're going to have to tap them out. Well, we will be able to do it on one side, but to initially get this started, we need to punch them inwards. This bolt is a really awkward thing to hold. So we have a roll pin there, and then we can do the other side. We can tap this out now through this way, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to run out of length on the pin punch, so I'm just going to do it the same this side. In fact, we don't really need this block anymore. That pin will come out, and you'll see that these two pins are different lengths. And the reason for that is the part of the body they have to go through is longer this side than it is this side. Now, once we've punched those three pins out, what we can actually do is just push the nozzle and blowback assembly rearwards. Now, just be very careful that you don't damage these two springs because they're a pain in the backside. And there we have the nozzle assembly out. So what we'll have to do is we can very carefully, we can either take the springs off the nozzle, or the back of the blowback housing. I'm probably going to think, yeah, the back of the blowback housing is probably going to be easier. These springs are so fragile, you do need to be careful. Let's get a little flathead just so I don't slip with my nails. Like that. Once we've done that, we can slide this off. We have the piston cup, the apparatus, the disc and the screw that holds that in place. And it's as simple as that. Now we've got the nozzle out. We've got a final pin, just having a look here to see which ones. So I think it's knurled on the right hand side, so if you're looking down it like this, the pin needs to come left to right. I can't remember for the life of me how tough these are. Can we push it or are we going to need to tap it? I think we're going to need to tap it. So set it down on a sturdy surface. I'm just using this 3D printed block just because it's handy. And we're going to, it only needs light taps. And then we can push the rest of the way. Now you don't have to take this pin out all the way. I'm just going to take it that far. And then just be careful when you pull this out because that valve's under spring pressure with a hell of a chunky spring. And that is your rocket valve. I was always under the assumption that KSCs were lower powered for the Japanese market, but I'm probably wrong on that. So we were doing about 400. We need to get down to about 350 or lower. So the silver one will drop it by 35. The black one will drop it by 50. So I'm going to drop it down with the black one. Now this looks to me like it is machined out of metal then coated. Aluminium it feels like almost. And we just place a spring over that like that. And if you've got a lathe at home, you know, I understand that many people won't have that. You could very easily turn this part. All you're basically doing is you're taking the back section of the standard valve, and instead of having this fluted rocket, almost like the rear of a dart, you're just thickening that material up to limit the gas flow. We put the spring and the valve back in the MP9, and then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my little finger because it's almost a perfect size to push the valve in, and then I'm going to push this pin in by hand, making sure I don't trap my finger until it holds the valve in, like so. And then we're going to tap this pin home. So put it on a flat surface, give it a tap, make sure it's flush on both sides, and it's not sticking out, so we're flush there. And then we're basically just going to reverse the process. So we take the rear part of the blowback housing, and this is where you want to be very careful. The best advice I can give you, if I can locate it on the bench, probably could just use a file for this. Let's use a little flathead. And you're just taking these little pieces of the spring at the back, and you're just letting them sit over those little pegs on the rear. Take your time with this, because if you did slip with this, you could very easily mulch up those springs because they are so insanely thin. Like that, and there's like a little thicker section on the pin. You'll see it's about here, and that just retains the spring. The beautiful thing about this now is a lot of the Vorsk VMP1 parts are compatible with the MP9s, and what that means for us is, you know, they do make parts available, so you can get spares. Now you can buy complete bolts, you can buy complete nozzle groups, blowback housings, you can even buy these springs on their own. So that's one good thing to come out of the Vorsk VMP1 is part availability. And if you had a downgrade nozzle, I have a downgrade nozzle spare in the VMP1 box, you could just take the nozzle out and swap it in, and you wouldn't have to do any of this crazy stuff. So I think the reason why I bought these valves was because I was on Patrol Base's website. I was picking up another Vorsk cantilever mount because they had one in stock, because I needed another one because I bought a couple of Vorsk scopes, which I'll be talking about in the next video. And they had these on the website. I just put in their search bar MP9, these popped up, and I was like, oh, there, you know, on the shelf, ready to go. Why not have it nice and simple? And I haven't got to do any Google or anything like that. And I can also get this thing ready to go to a game. So I believe it was this way. So I'm going to take my little lever off the back and the spring, and all I'm going to do is push the spring down flat with my finger. I apologise because I'm trying to do this and explain it at the same time, and sometimes I understand I might take things out of frame. So you want the flat part of the spring to sit on that little indent, and you basically want to push, but as you push this spring to sort of line it up, if I can get it to sit in, you kind of want to jiggle it into place. Now I'm just going to look through, see what the problem is. Okay, I've pushed it up a little too far, slide that assembly down a little bit, and now the pin goes straight through. Just make sure you're pushing that spring in, because the last thing you want to do is catch it with that pin and destroy that spring. Again, it's a spare part. You really don't want to have to be ordering. Now to get these pins back in, I'm not going to be using the 1.5. I'm going to go up. Probably to let's try 3, because I don't want to go past flush, but I also don't want to slip off the bolt. What that will enable me to do is, you know, the step up in pin size will enable me to push the pin in, but it won't enable me to push the pin in further than this flat face. I know I'm probably telling you how to suck eggs, you guys probably already know this, but if someone out there doesn't know it, you know, it could potentially help them, and that's why I mention it. So we're going to hammer these in from the outside. Just going to lightly tap the roll pin, because these roll pins, what they always want to do is they want to shoot out in either direction. Let me zoom you in there. So the roll pins, when you hit them, they're always going to want to go in each direction. If you've done many roll pins, you know what that's like. So I'm just tapping it lightly. And then once we know it's in and it's not going to slip anywhere, we can put a little bit more pressure on. As I get closer to it, I'm going to switch to the punch. Again, that won't, using a punch like that's oversized won't let me punch it past it, because the last thing I want to do is be taking this thing all apart again and having to rinse and repeat. So you do need to make sure that you're putting the right pins in the right holes on the lower part of it, because if you put the wrong one in, you could put that one in on that side, it will go through too far, and I've seen people do it. The pin strikes this and it damages this part. So we're going to do the same again. I'm going to try and line this pin up best I can. And to start with, I'm going to be doing light taps with the hammer if I can get it to sit. It wants to stick to my finger. Just take your time with it, there's no rush. Try and rush it, you'll probably have an issue. Just tap it in slightly, I want to get it to there like that. Wants to sit in at an angle. There we go. Once we know it's started, I mean, for those that are trained to listen to these things, I mean, I'm using hammers all day. You know, I'm mostly panel beating in the automotive industry, so I can always tell when you're hitting metal materials. There's always like a frequency change when, you know, I'm tapping that, and then when it starts to go into the hole, there's a different sound. Now, a lot of you might not pick up on that, but those out there in metalworking will know what that sounds like. Now I need to try and hold this in place while I tap it. The MP9 bolt is quite an awkward shape to work with. See that, hear that change in pitch? That's how I know I'm no longer hitting the pin and I'm hitting the body of the bolt. Welcome to Metalworking 101. I'm just kidding. So with that back together, we've replaced the rocket valve. We're using the standard spring that came with it. We're now going to reassemble. So you've got your barrel, you've got the little key section at the back there, and your hop obviously comes towards the back. We can slide that in to the bolt, not forgetting this little assembly for your loading ramp and your bolt release. Then we can slide the front part of the outer barrel system on, and then what we want to do, this is where a lot of people used to get hung up on these MP9s, is we slide that section at the front there. While we're doing that, we can set. Now if you're grabbing the bolt, grab the outer barrel that you feel there as well, and we're just going to slide that back, if it's going to let me, and we're going to line that assembly up with the lower so it sits in there like that, because you'll see it got caught on there. You just want that to come back a bit so it slots in. Push the bolt forward, and then we can start to set it in place. If it's twisted a little bit like that, just make sure you set it in place on the lower. So that will go down. Now you've got a problem here because the bolt won't go in. And what you want to do is you've got the little bar that sits underneath the bolt there, and you're just going to push that forward. The bolt's going to be able to drop, and then it comes back there. And I think this is probably where most people break that part when doing maintenance. So that bar has to sit in front of the bolt, and that's what works the full auto sear. So as the bolt comes forward, it hits that sear, and that's what releases the hammer. And that's the bolt back in. Now, I just want to show you this bit here because it's not super obvious. So you'll look through that hole there. If you push the outer barrel back into position, you'll see it lines up with that circle. Get that in the center as best you can. We take our spring and our latch, or our push button, whatever you want to call it, from the front. Remember, small notch to the left side of the MP9, long notch to the right side, or the rounded edge of the steel plate facing up. When I was doing this on the MP1, the spring catapulted across the room just by looking at the thing, it felt like. So I'm going to push that all the way in. Now with that held in, you've got your pin, and you've got one side which has a little notch. Now that little notch needs to come to the left side as well. You'll also see that the pin has a flat section on it, and that flat section at the top you see there needs to marry up to that front part of the block. So we put this in here. It won't always go that smoothly. It might get bound up, and what you just need to check is everything's aligned properly. So with that in place, we can put the bolt to the front. We can slide in our recoil spring and guide rod. Make sure that's latched in. Now the early KSC MP9s had an issue where these rear plates used to be incorrect sizing, and no matter how well perfected you'd get this lined up, it couldn't notch into the metal like that. So years ago we had a problem, especially when we were getting in the ASG ones, where we were having to modify this plate so that would work. It was a bit of a nightmare. Now with this KSC one, it doesn't have anywhere near, it's almost like it's got better QC basically. I never saw it on the KWA boxed MP9s. It was always mostly I saw that issue on the ASG boxed MP9s. Could just be a batch difference, who knows. So as we locate this on the lower here, you'll see it sits there, and then at the back we're just going to press that button, and where those ASG MP9s used to struggle is because they weren't nailed out properly, or cut out properly, sorry, this button never used to sit proud. Now that button, for that guide rod to be in place, has to sit proud of the rear of the upper. If it's not sitting proud, it's not in place. Just take it apart, find it, and reset it again, because if that part isn't set properly, what can happen when you're firing it is the back of the top cover can actually lift off, and you don't want that. So we'll fold the stock again. We'll get our little screw from the front, and we're just going to screw this back in, making sure that you get it in nice and straight, because you don't want to cross thread that. You'll see how easy it is if you catch it with the flathead. This is quite soft polymer. I suppose if you're using a flathead, it's got like a nice sharp edge on it, but I don't worry too much about it. Just be careful. You don't mar it up too much. Right. Put our suppressor again back on now. This is just a dummy suppressor. There is no inner barrel or foam or anything like that in here. To be honest, foam in these things is kind of a yeah, it's not going to work. So put our mag back in, or not. The bolt won't go all the way back for some reason. There we go. So it looks like the guide rod was probably sticking. I think it still is. Now it is centered at the back, which is strange. Yeah, something's getting stuck. So I'm going to take a quick look at that. I mean, the amount of times I took this thing apart is absolutely fine. I'm going to take a quick look at that and we'll be back and we'll chrono this thing and see what it's doing. Okay, so all that was one of the little roll pins that I told you about, where you got the two, one on each side. On this side, it was just sticking out just a gnat's hair. So there is space to recess them just below the surface, which I recommend doing. And it was just getting caught up. So now we're nice and smooth. Let's get this put back together. And yeah, if you ever see a problem like that, you'll see that when I was doing it, I know there's something wrong. It's not quite happy. Don't fire it, which you'll see I didn't do. You need to locate what's going on before you carry on. So we've got an open bolt with no BBs in. Put the mag in, load a round in. We'll get this through the chrono. We'll see how much we've dropped. And with the lowest valve, you see there, we're bang on a joule at 336 FPS. Yeah, bang on a joule, 328. So the black valve is perfect for the UK. And there we go. This MP9 is ready and safe to be used on pretty much any field here in the UK. It is very warm today, so you know it's not like we're doing this in cold weather and it's going to heat up in the summer. And you know, if you do get into the winter and you've gone with this valve set, and you're down on power, you can always switch it out to the silver valve or put the rocket valve back in. You've got plenty of adjustability there to make sure you're field legal. So thanks very much for tuning into this video today, guys. I hope you stuck along to the end. If you have, put it down in the comments below. As always, I stuck around to the end because I think it's going to be a long one, almost 30 minutes. I hope you appreciate the hours spent to tidy this bench up. Honestly, I was finding parts that I didn't know where they'd come from, and now, same problem, I just don't know what to do with them, where to put them, because someday they might be useful, isn't it? So I don't really like throwing stuff away that might come in use one day. So thanks for tuning in. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check the links down in the description below. And from me, and a very clean bench, we'll see you in the next video.